The tapping was making me crazy. I was so distracted, I could barely focus on this second day of training. Zoe, that's Zoe with a Y, as she alerted everyone yesterday, was drumming her long acrylic press-on nails on her desktop. They were exaggerated stilettos in the garish color of a dandelion, about 2 inches too long, and they curled under toward her palms, making me wonder how she would be able to type the 60 words per minute this temporary office assignment required. At least she sat behind me now, in the little training class of 8. Assorted worker bees sent by various temp agencies, all vying for the healthy pay rate that generally comes with banking and finance projects. The instructor had just passed out index cards for us to write our contact information. We lived in a cold, snowy area, so they'd set up a sort of emergency buddy system in the event that the company considered closing due to inclement weather. My buddy to call was Rosalie, an older lady who seemed even more annoyed by Zoe's clicky talons than I was. I turned around to collect the cards from Zoe to pass them to the front. I noticed her kind of studying the cards. She caught me looking and quickly turned back to her own card, covered with a flowy calligraphy scrawl and little hearts over the eyes. "Sorry," she said. "I forgot to write my zip code. Here you go." She awkwardly struggled to scoop up the cards with the press-ons, but after about 30 seconds, she assembled the cards into a pile and handed them over. I passed them to the front and stared at the clock. Still 2.5 hours to go. But at least I was working again and making some money. I walked in the front door around 20 after 5. I was greeted by Brutus, our huge, clumsy chocolate lab. He weighed between 102 and 110 pounds, depending on how much people food he was able to finagle. So he was an imposing force. But we joked that if an intruder was bold enough to get past him, they might just get licked to death. Brutus was our sweet, gentle giant. I found my husband out in the garage. Well, sort of. He had propped his ladder beneath this primitive-looking hole in the ceiling that led to what the listing agent had called an attic. It was certainly no attic. There was no little door or cover over the hole, no actual floor up there, just some plywood over rafters. But for now at least, we had somewhere to store the Christmas tree, Halloween decorations, and seasonal clothes. So the mock little attic would have to do. My husband peered down through the hole as Brutus, tail wagging, pushed his big barrel head into my thigh, begging for attention. "So, how was day 2? I shrugged. "Good, I guess. I think I'm going to like it." Just then, I heard someone knocking on the front door. I shut Brutus in the garage with my husband and peered through the peephole. Seriously? I opened the door to find a crying Zoe with a Y on the doorstep. "Zoe?" "Marcus kicked me out. We had a huge fight." She glanced around me and into the living room. "Can I come in, please?" What could I do? Say no? Against my better judgment, I backed up a few steps and let her come into our house. 40 minutes later, she was still prattling on about the fight with her boyfriend. Marcus, the amazing wide receiver who flunked out of college and got kicked off the team when he failed a drug test. He and Zoe were both 23. They had met in rehab. I knew her entire life story at this point. Between work and now this impromptu coffee meetup in my kitchen, I knew more than I cared to. At that point, my husband had clearly gotten tired of hiding out in the garage. Brutus walked into the kitchen with him. She spied a box of milk bones on the counter and ran over. "Aw, can I give him a treat?" Her hand was already wrist deep into the box. "What's his name?" "Brutus," I answered. "And this is Danny, my husband. Dan, this is Zoe, from work." What the hell? Why was I telling her any of this? He nodded. "Nice to meet you," he lied again through clenched teeth. "Look, Kayla, we gotta be somewhere." Zoe was crouched down, 2 gravy bone dog treats laying flat in her palm. Brutus eyed her warily. Finally uncomfortable like the rest of us, Zoe tossed the treats onto the floor, then she jumped up, grabbed her purse, and headed for the door. "Thanks for listening," she said. "Maybe we can do lunch this week." "Sure," I lied, shutting the door as she walked down the sidewalk to a battered old Chevy Lumina. At midnight, I was still wide awake. How did Zoe just find herself at my door? And why didn't I think to ask her that? It was so creepy and brazen that she just showed up out of nowhere. I mean, what are the odds? Dumb ass. The index cards. She had to have gotten my address off my contact card at work. I yawned. I was finally getting drowsy, too sleepy to worry any more about Zoe with a Y. But I made a silent vow to keep my distance from her for the duration of this assignment. As it turned out, I didn't have to fret about it at all. Zoe wasn't at work the next day, or the day after that. Our instructor wouldn't divulge what had happened to her, but one of the other temps had said she failed her drug test and was fired. Now, how does this even happen? At any finance job I've ever had, they give you just 48 hours from acceptance of the position to get your drug test and fingerprinting. I had to scramble to do both in the allotted time. But I knew from experience that sometimes the hiring company just needs a body in the chair, so they let in workers before they're fully vetted. That must be what happened with her. Sad for Zoe, but I was relieved. She gave off the strangest vibe. Clearly, the other people on our team were relieved by her absence too. At our mid-morning break, we learned we were getting an early dismissal. Training was finished, so we were wrapping up around 1:30, but they were paying us for the whole day. Danny had texted to say that Brutus was wheezing. Really bad, he said. He was taking him to the vet to see if his asthma was acting up again. He figured they wouldn't be gone very long. When I walked through the door, I was surprised to find no Brutus, no Danny. I called out to them, but they weren't anywhere in the house. My husband's truck wasn't in the driveway either, so they weren't out for a walk. Just then, I thought I heard some sort of noise in the garage, almost a whimper. As I reached for the doorknob, my cell phone rang from my back pocket. It was Danny. Hey, Kayla, get out of the house. Wait, what? What are you talking about? Get out of the house right now. I grabbed my purse and keys and ran for the door. Why? What is going on? I got into my car and slammed the door shut. The vet just pulled 2 bloody fingers out of Brutus's throat. They had long yellow fingernails. Oh my God. She wasn't just creepy. Zoe was batshit crazy. The police arrived around the same time Danny and Brutus got home. They found a small puddle of blood in the garage right below the hole in the ceiling. When they loaded her into the ambulance, Zoe, who loved to talk obviously, confessed to all of it. When her boyfriend kicked her out for failing her drug test and losing yet another job, she had nowhere to go. She had been picking the lock on our back door and was hiding in our crawl space for over 2 days. She was there while we were sleeping, showering, everything. Because Brutus was contained in the house, he couldn't get to her in the garage, but she finally had to sneak into the kitchen to steal some food, along with some other valuables and a small amount of cash. This time, Brutus caught her, and when she tried to bribe him with the gravy bone treats, he defended his turf and bit her good. I hadn't been home long enough to see the small droplets of blood leading out to the garage. She was the whimpering I'd heard, and I shuddered to think what might have happened to me if I'd confronted her alone. As it turns out, her fingers were able to be reattached. And get this, her real name wasn't even Zoe. It was Marissa. They charged her with breaking and entering, burglary too, I think. Apparently, she was a grifter with a pretty lengthy rap sheet, including 2 juvenile convictions for assault. So how she kept getting hired is beyond me. They said they had found my credit card statements and some client tax information from work in her possession. I'm sure I'll have to testify at her trial in a few months. Meantime, Brutus, our gentle giant hero, was fine. It took all of us a few weeks to relax in the house, but things are better now. I was hired at the company where I first met Zoe, and it's all good. The only drama for me now is the usual snarky gossip.